I'm Jake Bruton, and today on the Unbuild It podcast, I am your only regular host. I am joined today. Tim Uhler is sitting in for Steve Basic. Tim,
I hope I can fill that large seat.
What he always says, 140-pound frame.
Yeah.
Steve had a previous engagement and was unable to make it on the Siga Switzerland trip. Thankfully, he got to see part of it in January. And if you're also wondering, Peter Yost is not here today. Peter's officially too old to travel. Not just internationally, like he's not supposed to leave the neighborhood without his oxygen tank or his wheelchair or his nurse. And so I think it's just easier for Pete to just be at home and get older and older. And there's like a father time thing going on with Pete right now. I told Pete the other day, Tim, that he'll know that he's too old when I quit making fun of him for being old. And then he set up a perfect old joke on the podcast, and I sat there and did nothing. And he stared at me for like a full 10 seconds, like, did that just happen? Did I just get too old? And the other laugh that you hear in the background is Chris Mirchandani. Chris is Live Free Contracting on Instagram. Oh, I didn't say Tim's Awesome Framers on Instagram. If you didn't recognize.
It's the most ironic name on Instagram, right?
You are pretty awesome.
Oh, thank you.
Chris, thank you for joining Tim and I. Tim, thank you for sitting in all week.
Nice to be here.
Thanks for having us.
I feel like we sat here for a while.
We might have.
So I knew this might come up. If any of these jokes seem like they don't play well in the room, like nobody thinks it's funny, it's because all of these jokes and all of this content has already been ran through once. We did a dry run where we thought we were recording, where I thought we were recording, and we weren't. And so I have to say thank you again, because you guys are skipping the Siga barbecue to record the same thing that we just recorded.
I feel like it's Michael Scott saying, an opening line is so important, I like to try out 2 or 3 to see which lands.
See what happens when Steve and Peter aren't around?
Yeah, exactly. There's no adult supervision and nobody remembers to press record, which is not even a real joke because neither one of them know how to work the equipment. They don't even know which end goes into the mic and which end goes into the pod track. So
architects, am I right?
And goodness. Consultants. They have no real world experience. I'm sorry, Peter.
This round 2 might be better than round 1.
Yeah.
We're off to a good start.
So, which one of you would like to say where we are this week?
Go for it, Chris.
You want to play paper, rock, scissors?
I haven't played that in 20 years.
Okay.
We are in Switzerland. We are, how do you pronounce?
Russwil.
Russwil?
Yes.
Russwil, little town just outside of Lucerne. It was about a half an hour drive for us, and we are at the Siga factory tour, checking out their main facilities here, and it has been a great day. Have you guys had some fun?
I've had a blast. We're literally at the end of day 1. Like, everybody was here yesterday. A lot of us went to dinner last night, but today is the beginning of the Siga events. We should also note that this is not their only facility. This is just headquarters. And I asked, just so you guys know, I asked Etienne if we could see the other facility and went, nope, that's where R&D is.
9. He said 9.
Not a chance. And he was like, most of our employees don't get to see that facility.
Interesting.
And I was like, that's pretty cool. Like, they're
top secret.
Yeah, they got the special sauce and they're keeping a hold of it. So
classified stamp.
So run us through the beginning of our day, Tim. Skip breakfast, though. Okay. And that's the same joke I made the first time.
It's still just as good.
Yeah. Breakfast started at 7. We had to be on the bus by 7:25. So what did we actually start about? Like 8:15? 8:30? What was the start? Etienne had the nice comments at the beginning, kind of outlining what would you say? Like, not really mission statement of Siga.
Their ethical awareness of what their position in the world is.
Yeah, which was essentially contribute and try to make things better.
And they have an opportunity to, like, really push the envelope without
pun.
Making
Nice.
We should have a little pun announcement that comes at the beginning of every pun. That they can push the envelope in the world of air sealing and managing for that, and that can have a greater impact on the world. And you and I were just talking about Switzerland kind of feels like that when you're here, just like as a country. So it kind of makes sense.
Yeah, the community, just to brag a little, Nikki and I have spent 3 days in Lauterbrunnen and 3 days up in Grindelwald, and then traveling on trains. I think Switzerland has like the most rail of any country in the world, I think. It's on Wikipedia, so you know it's got to be true, right?
Must be.
But getting around and seeing people, interacting with people, and then seeing how they live, and like right here where we're at, seeing the farmland right around this facility, there's such a sense of calm. And it seems to translate into, like, how many people did we meet today that are not Swiss, but they work for Siga, and they speak how many different languages,
Yeah.
and then they've got PhDs.
The majority of the people we talked to today.
Yeah, and it was like, but no sense of elitism. It was like they really are working for, I don't know, the way that these communities seem to work. It's like you can't tell where one person's piece of property ends and the other person's begin. It just looks like this tapestry that's been designed, and it's just beautiful.
Very communal, right?
Yeah.
With this sense of community and doing right by the world, let's talk about the building next door that I'm pointing at that no one can see me pointing at.
We see you. We see you.
Well, yes, that
Well,
is
Chris
fair.
just got to go over there.
Yeah, I just took a quick little in and out, and it's a cool building. And even too, they had some photos just along the wall side there of kind of what the building looked like before they had transformed it into what it is now. And they put in a lot of work.
So it's the Siga guest house, and
Which we could have stayed at.
Yep. In normal years, they host tour groups like ours there, and it's a facility that it's basically their own little mini hotel. It's 70 people. The reason we're not staying there is
Refugees from Ukraine.
so this
All women
whole
and children.
idea of do right by the world. They have the ability and the funds available to them to help fellow man in a way that is like very surprising. Like,
Yeah, and they feed them every day. It's like we could see them come in at lunch today. I don't know. That one kind of hit me on the drive in.
Gives you a little bit of the goosebumps too, right?
yeah.
This is nothing to do with construction, nothing to do with high performance buildings, things like that, building science, which we love. They are legitimately just trying to do good out there.
And we wouldn't know, except that was the reason we weren't staying there.
Yep.
So it's like there's no billboard saying, hey, we're sponsoring X number of...
I haven't seen anything
Yeah.
about that whatsoever.
We're not housing 10 families that are displaced and making sure that they have, I think my comment earlier was like the thing that they absolutely don't have, like the most up in the air thing. Like right now they have a home, a place to sleep where they know they're going to be safe and they're going to be fed.
Yeah.
We should also note that Siga gave us no direction and didn't even ask us to do the podcast.
right.
We're doing this because we want to. So
Well, we're doing it again because we want to.
the first time was to get paid. The second time is to get...
Yeah. Well, we didn't talk about this the first time through, but since you mentioned that this morning as Etienne showed some of the statistics, just on where we get energy from, earthwide, right? The massive changes that would need to take place in order to benefit the environment. And what was it? He asked us, housing is really, buildings are the
Buildings are
biggest
80%.
user of energy. So their climate is just to make, or their pledge is just to try to make things a little better.
Which I think is pretty awesome. Okay, so then they brought us to the facility. We got to hear an inspiring presentation from Etienne, which is rare for a company to get up and give a talk like that, where you're like, oh yeah, I'm in. Let's do it.
I was all in, yeah.
And then we immediately started getting some science lessons and
was fun
hands-on science where you actually got to see these ideas about building science in action.
Practical terms.
So, Chris, do you want to start with one and explain how it worked?
Yeah, the beer one, because, well...
Yeah, we should know. I'm on my second beer now because this is our second podcast.
I'm still on one, which is why I sound the most, whatever it is that I sound
Measured.
like.
Describe the first couple of sips.
Yeah,
so
measured.
We're good. One of the experiments we saw, simple science, essentially, he had emptied a cold beer bottle, had let's call it a Swiss coin. I can't remember exactly what it was called because we call them loonies, but he put a Swiss coin on the top of it and immediately put his warm-ish hands on the bottle. We got to watch the coin bump up, jump
Rattle.
a little,
Yeah.
rattle a little bit, and it had some movement, and that was kind of a cool little experiment right in front of us.
And the idea that we took very cold air that was left in the bottle from a cold bottle after the bottle was emptied, the touching of the bottle then causes enough conduction from the heat of his hands into that small volume of space for that air to expand enough that it has to lift that little coin.
Yeah.
The idea in conjunction with your house is that the forces are enacted upon your house and you have to be able to manage them. And if you have something that's going to leak simply, then you're not managing what's going on very quickly. It's a great little, like, I would do that experiment to show crew members or field crew, like, hey, look, this is how simple it is. Like, my hand can cause this volume of air to have a problem, to have a leak. So we have to be paying close attention so that we're managing that on the larger scale, because there's a heck of a lot bigger force than the palm of my hand. And I'm not just meaning like Tim's hand.
Framer hands.
We're going back to the framer
I got
fingers.
Chris in the middle of a drink there. I heard him.
Well,
was taking a sip.
who won the box of like breath mints, and I snatched that out of the air.
I thought they were Ricola.
Are they?
You definitely stuck that catcher's mitt up in the air and snatched that thing out of there.
I was pretty proud because I usually miss.
Okay, so then Tim, walk us through the sodium bicarbonate experiment that he shared.
Okay, so you're going to have to walk us through that because I'm still wrapping my head around that.
Okay, so he took a tea light candle, a little bitty round candle. It's a 4-inch by 4-inch by 4-inch glass vase. The tea light's sitting in the bottom, and there is baking soda, or sodium bicarbonate if you want to be a fancy person, around the candle. And as you know from middle school science class, he injected a syringe full of vinegar around it, and that reaction pushes all the oxygen out. It causes CO2. It extinguishes the flame on the candle because the candle doesn't have anything to breathe at that point. And the whole point of this is not to show CO2, O2, or any reaction like that. The whole point is to show diffusion. So it's an open top vase. He immediately lights another match, sticks it down in the vase, and it goes out again. And then we stand there talking about what just happened, why it happened, maybe a couple minutes about what we're having for lunch, and then he lights another match and sticks it down in that open top vase, and the candle will light. And the whole idea is, as we said in the first podcast, Newton's second law of thermodynamics, everything goes from more to less. So we're talking about diffusion in this instance. We're talking about everything wants to be equal. So if it's more wet, it wants to be less wet, like the thing next to it. Or if it's less wet, it wants to be more wet, like the thing next to it. Or if there's more oxygen or more CO2, it is all about being equal across whatever the opportunity for assembly is, or the room, or whatever it is. And the idea just is, it sounds so confusing when we say Newton's law of thermodynamics and everything flows from more to less. But if you think of it just as more to less, that's all you really have to know. If I put a dry brick in a bucket of water, that brick's going to want to be more like the water, and the water's going to want to be more like the brick. Everything is more to less. And if you can master controlling more to less or allowing more to less when necessary, let's call that Jake's first rule of building science. Manage for more to less.
You got a rule book now, eh?
I do now. So far, it's a Post-it note that has crayon on it.
Well, yeah, and the whiteboard. No, Jake's first law is press record. Jake's second law is that other
manage
thing.
for more to less. Jake's second law is basically the same as Newton's.
Yeah. See law 1.
So, okay, we got to see some really cool hands-on science, but then we also got a really good, and Joe Stiebrick uses this all the time, a really good analogy to use with crews or customers about managing and control layers and the 3 layers, right? Does somebody want to walk us through that so I'm not the only one talking?
Yeah, that was nice. Which we should have looked up his name in between the 2 podcasts, right? Because he's a PhD, right? He's a professor, but an outstanding teacher. Like, really sucks you into the discussion. We're out of our chairs. Here's an experiment. Now sit down. Let's explain. Out of our chairs. Let's do the next one. So who was like the half building, half human, right?
Yeah.
And then he shows us the 3 layers, like when we're trying to dress to go skiing, snowboarding, hiking, whatever, is you've got your base layer, which needs to wick. Then you have your like layer of fleece or whatever to keep you warm.
Yep.
And then your 3rd layer is the shell, which we're trying to keep the weather out. So applying that to the building, it's like you said, it's not rocket science. It's just I like it because I'm not really into the building science stuff. So when somebody breaks it down like that, it's easier for me to understand why the things I'm supposed to do are important.
Yeah.
That weren't important 15, 20 years ago, so to speak.
Well, and there's this idea that, like, as soon as someone puts a story behind something, think of it as, like, if you've ever read any, like, sales or marketing books, the sales principle is never show people the numbers. It's always tell them a story. If you have a story that goes along with it, the learning is so much easier because then you're going to learn it through the story, not through the science necessarily. That's the way my dumb brain works. And just the idea of like, oh, well, I understand how a coat works and I understand how a raincoat works. Those are really simple principles to apply to a building. It's just we look at the building and we go, oh, no, that's way more complicated. But it's not, you know. Yeah, I think that coat analogy is amazing.
Relatable concepts, right?
Yeah.
It's also a good argument for continuous insulation, too, because you don't stuff the insulation between your ribs. You put it over top of everything.
Yeah, you don't eat it. You put it on.
You don't eat it. You put it on.
Although I have to say, as somebody who's not as svelte as I used to be, I'm not as cold in the winter as I used to be.
So maybe you do eat
But
it.
all the skinny people are like, it's freezing out. I'm like, I'm doing great.
Yeah, fair. I agree. Okay, so then we went to some hands-on learning, and we got to see a few new products. So, Chris, do you want to walk us through the very fun window product that we got to play with?
Corners. Oh my gosh. I think everyone was pretty excited about this one. Seemed like it was very feedback based and problem solution oriented. And Siga's come out with a new exterior corner for us, pre-made, ready to go, double taped. And it was quite simple to install.
So a pre-made corner that has release or liner, release paper, whatever.
For window rough openings.
Yeah, to do that corner, the bottom corners.
Yep. And I think you had mentioned your wife, who had never done a corner before.
So, okay, full disclosure, the only windows I have ever set are flanged windows. Nailing.
Okay.
Well, some window companies call them flanges, but I've been corrected on Instagram that they're nailing fins. Okay. So that was new to me. I'd never done it. So, you install it to the window, set the window. The flashing is self-adhesive on the opposite side. And so for those of you that don't know my brother, he's an accountant, his corner looks like wadded up tissue paper. Like there's more wrinkles than should be humanly possible. Mine looked a little better. It had less wrinkles, but still. And then Nikki comes in, has never done anything with flashing tape ever, and it's the most perfect corner. They were taking pictures of it.
Probably the best one in the group for sure.
Yeah, which, there's a
Did that
lesson
hurt a
there.
little?
No, not at all. No, we've been married for 22 years. Very little hurts.
I thought you were going to say we're past the hurt.
We're way past it.
We're beyond
We're
hurt.
numb. You're 15, the numbness set in. She's smarter than me. She does all the planning, the navigating. I make sure the electronics work.
You know what? I feel like our house is the same way, except for I also get to pick up the heavy stuff. If we weren't married, her bag would still be upstairs. Either that or she'd have to pack downstairs, which she's probably smart enough to figure out, and I didn't figure out until after I made the joke.
But I think it was a cool one for our group of people.
And we talked about this before. I looked at it and thought, oh, that's the Schluter shower waterproofing outside corner that they pre-make for us too. Yep. It's the exact same shape. I knew immediately what it was that he had in his hand. I was like, oh, I understand how this works. And we went right into it, and it was simple. None of the new products that we're going to talk about are available yet, so no harassing Etienne. Or maybe it's Build Tight on Instagram. Send Etienne a message and say, quit showing us stuff that we can't buy. The guys on the Unbuild It podcast told us to harass you.
Well, let's be fair. Unbuild It podcast only has 3 or 4 listeners, right?
And 2 of them are sitting here with me.
And the 2 that are normally here.
Mom, I'll show you how to use Instagram, and you can send Etienne a message. But it's the same idea as the Schluter system. It's a systems approach where everything's going to be under their umbrella. It really was like I think that thing could be a game changer for a lot of people. it simplifies that. Like, oh, are we cutting bow ties? Is this a 3-piece corner? Well, this other tape stretches, but are we stretching it too far? Or I don't like the way this one. And it's just like, oh, well, this worked really well and easy. It was simple.
Yeah. It'd be interesting to see once it comes out and we get a chance to actually use it and kind of figure out the timing. How much does using this system cost versus any other system?
Oh, yeah, sure.
Factoring time. That's always the thing that it drives Brian and me nuts, is that people will be like, you could have done it this way and it's faster. And it's like, that's true. They would have saved us 10 seconds here.
Twice as much money to buy that part.
But if we look at it and it's at the holistic, like the whole process and what it saves you in the future, we made that back in time. So not doing like multiple pieces in a corner.
Yeah, it's a big one.
And clearly, Siga kind of did their research on this. The Schluter corners, like we talked about, they work. They're tight. They're easy to install. And they literally just took a similar working concept and made it compatible with their products they had. And that whole product compatibility thing and what works with what, that's always been a bit of a discussion point for so many of us.
Yeah. And to go to one manufacturer. So real quick, I should interject and say, if you hear plates and forks and people laughing and having a good time, I do have to say, really thank you guys for recording a second one, because you really are skipping the barbecue right now. And we can see people eating.
Yeah, they look really happy.
Ben's out there rubbing his stomach like it's Santa Claus, and we left out milk and cookies for him.
He's got crumbs
in
his beard.
I've never seen anybody eat as fast as Ben Bogey. Look at that.
That was a whole rack of ribs.
In one bite?
That is impressive.
How does he do that and breathe?
I think that's the point.
Somebody should tell Ben, we need to breathe, but our houses need to breathe.
Doesn't exist.
Yeah. Breathe, dude, breathe.
And so then we got to tour the facility. We'll come back to new products, because we're actually following the way that we ran today. We got to tour the facility. Number one, before we talk about anything about the way that they manufacture, let's talk about the fact that the building's made out of wood because it's better for the environment. The building was clean, which if you've ever toured an American manufacturing facility, it's like earplugs and a dust mask, and it looks like no one's ever cleaned in the entire building, and it looks like they dimmed the lights to make the tour romantic or something. And then the lighting. There were big windows. You could see outside. You could see the Swiss mountains. Like it all feels very much, and maybe it's by their intent to make us feel this way, or maybe it's by intent to make their employees feel this way. It feels like a nice, warm building to be able to come to work in. I'm blown away by their facility.
Yeah.
100%. They have clearly invested into this to make the employee experience as good as possible with the cafeterias, the food, the facilities. And
they have running water. Yeah. And we should note that they have bathrooms on every floor.
And sparkling water on tap.
Yeah.
Bubbly water on tap.
Mint gas. When you order water, order it mint gas or with carbonation.
That's the one. But clearly, because even too, we met quite a few employees, and a lot of them were 10, 12, 15, 24 years, I think was the professor who had been here. And clearly the employee happiness scale is through the roof.
Yeah. So from a manufacturing point of view, besides how cool it was, Tim, do you want to talk us through the put glue on things that then they don't use? The backer?
Yeah. I'd really like to do the tour again, just to be a little closer to some of it. It was nice to hear, but you were talking about the glue goes on the liner, and then, I would have assumed, or I did assume, that you're looking at the facing of whichever one of the flashing tapes it is, that the adhesive is applied to that, and then the liner's added after. So when
everyone thinks that.
Yeah. Okay, good. It's not just me.
No, I got you, man.
So when she showed essentially the liner's rolled out, and then the glue goes on it, and then it's baked, and then all of the other layers are added, and then at the end they pull that particular piece of liner off, and it doesn't stick.
Everything's just pressed together, essentially, right?
And I'm like, but the glue's stuck at the beginning. How does that... So I'm blown away by...
So the glue didn't stick at the beginning. The liner was laying flat, and the glue was applied over top of it. And so then the liner still has its non-adhesion properties, the glossy face to it.
This is why I got to go through it again.
No, this is good. So they use the liner as a substrate just to hold the glue in place. But the glue doesn't adhere to it the same way it doesn't adhere to the liner that they use in the final tape. Everything lays on. They press it all together. They peel the liner off the same way you would on the job site, and then they just put a different liner on it that's more appropriate for
Have you thought
shipping,
about
packaging.
being a tour guide for Siga, so that people like
I
me can
have.
understand?
If I could live here.
Yeah,
They have a high quality of living, I hear.
yeah, and it was all clean.
Yeah.
I know you mentioned that, like the building's clean, but on the manufacturing side, it's like where's the little dust bunnies and
And they were like, oh, well, this liner, yes, it's not part of the final product, but we can reuse it a bunch of times, and then when we're done with it, we use it for packaging.
yeah.
What?
Yep.
Good for you guys.
Yeah.
You know. I also would like to point out, and this happened last time I was here, we get to see all this incredible technology and ingenuity, and the fact that they make the tape in a huge roll and then slice it to whatever you want, so you could order whatever you want, basically. And everybody gets more excited about the robots packing boxes at the end.
The
and I'm
robots
just
were
like, oh
pretty
yeah,
cool.
so did I. I totally did that too.
Yeah, I'm impressed with. So before we did the factory tour, sitting down with somebody else with a PhD and showing us the testing and like prototypes, iterations, how they test. I forget how many was the one.
At least 100, I think.
Yeah.
Yep.
And they test it on job sites. They've got it attached and exposed to the weather for years on end. So it blows me away to see how much engineering has to go into the chemical and then the testing to make sure that it works, that it's sticky and all of that, but it's not necessarily too sticky so that you can work with it. That's one thing. But then to manufacture it so that it works at scale. And this isn't that big of a building.
Yeah. And she said it's like 12 employees or something to run a shift.
Yep.
And it's like, it gives me way more appreciation for when I have a product in my hand of knowing there is so much more under the hood than I could have ever imagined.
Ben's waving at us with another mouthful of ribs too.
Wow.
Just breathe, Ben. Just
Hi,
breathe,
Colin.
dude.
But no, definitely cool.
I'm distracted by the fish tank of dorks that we get to see from this window.
What do you think they're saying about us?
Oh yeah, look at them. I wonder if they pressed record this time. One of the other really cool things about the employment process of being an employee here. Actually, you know what? I'm going to wait and talk about that in a minute at the very end, because that was kind of how it applied for our very end. Sorry. We got to see another, which I think was the more revolutionary, even more than the window corner. We got to see basically a boot flashing product that they're going to make.
Not out yet.
Not out yet. Yep. Etienne on Instagram is build tight. You can send him a message and say Jake and Tim and Chris said that these were available and that they were free.
Etienne's going to love us for this one.
Well, we get to find out whether or not Etienne listens to the podcast. That's what we get to find. So there are other manufacturers that have been making EPDM boots that then you get taped to the wall, or some adhesive boots. So you have a wire, you have a pipe, you have a plumbing penetration, water spigot, whatever. But all those products were either a paper-faced product that tends to fall apart during the construction project, or a plastic product that works great, but then you also have to apply tape to it. They figured out, hey, we make some of the best tape that there is. Why don't we make one of these products? So it's an EPDM boot, which is the same as like Goodyear or Firestone used to make roofing out of, or still make roofing out of, or like many other manufacturers make a plumbing product, or the OD flashings that go on a roof. It's EPDM, so it's rated for whatever that, it's 3 months worth of UV or something like that. And then their Fintrim tape, which is my favorite tape that they make because we use it all the time. And it has a split back on it, and you can slide the thing over the pipe and then pull the back off and mush it down. And they had us do a little competition.
That was a fun one.
We should note that we're going to talk about it, even though all three of us lost both times.
Yeah.
I wasn't trying very hard, just saying.
Oh, that's what he always says.
My mission
I
was
wasn't trying.
quality over speed.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's just play that one off.
Yeah.
But yeah,
You failed.
Yeah. Oh yeah. But that was a fun little competition. We timed ourselves using the old methodology that we've all known with the resin tape taping all of our penetrations, everything like that. And then we had an opportunity to use their new product. I think we came in for the standard taping methods around 5 to 6 minutes for most folk, and everyone using their new product came in 2 minutes or less. I think the fastest was 50 seconds, but we're not going to talk about that guy.
Yeah, no.
Because he's still eating ribs.
Mr. McRib is going to... He is carrying his third plate now, if you see that. And that one looks like cheesecake and ribs on it. Way to go,
happy,
Ben.
Though. Let's be
does
honest.
look
He
happy.
really happy.
I've never seen a plate with cheesecake and ribs, though. That's dedication to the craft there.
But it was cool.
But they cut the time in half, and even if it were the exact same amount of time, if you looked at whoever came in first, we won't name names, on the Resan tape, where you're cutting a bunch of little pieces of tape to go around a 4-inch pipe. If you look at the quality of that seal versus the quality of the EPDM gasket with the Fentrum, that's a no-brainer.
Night and day.
That's one of those things that I look at it and I go, okay, does this add $50 or $100 to the project? And it's about the same amount of time. I'm still game. I know what water does to buildings. I spent 25 years as a remodeler. I understand what the problem is there and why it's going to suck. And this is a groundbreaking for me. I didn't realize that we could just make this other product better.
Yeah, and seeing the iterations as they tried out different versions. But this one with the release with the liner, it's already, you don't have to sit there and, in the first podcast we were making fun of my hands, which I can't.
Your fingers.
Regulation basketball, just saying.
He added the word regulation.
Yes, I learned the first time. Ball. Yeah, elementary school regulation. Yeah. But the release paper is somewhat loose, kind of in the shape of that penetration.
Yeah.
So if you install it correctly, fold it and shove it in, all you do is tear it off. There's none of the picking with the corners like you see on my Instagram reel, even though I tried to edit out that part.
Remind me when we're done. We said earlier, I'll show you how to pull the backing on every.
Oh yeah, that's right.
It's a dog ear from the front to the back. So I mean, this is a real easy theme. We want to do better by the world. We're trying to do better. We're coming up with new products. We're trying to make your guys' lives easier, sort of thing. It all fits together nicely in a little bow. It seems like it's a nice little present to our industry.
Well, it's that whole discussion on that feedback, right? And kind of how we're thinking maybe social media is playing an aspect into this, where that line of communication to a manufacturer, a company, a tool, whatever it may be, has kind of streamlined in that sense, where you literally could just send a message and be like, I love this product. Could you maybe think about doing something like this? And Siga clearly is listening to guys like us who have been doing this. So
yeah.
And you know what? Sorry to interrupt, Tim. We talked about it's the feedback, it's their access to our information, but it's the same thing as what Instagram does for our business. It makes us look like professionals. It makes people trust us and respect us some people, not all people, before we start building for them. And that means that the same thing happens when the manufacturer looks at your Instagram. They look at you and they go, oh, this guy knows what he's talking about. Yep. Maybe not you and I, but probably Chris, and they go, oh, this company clearly knows what they're doing. Oh, they sent us a message. We should.
Yeah.
So maybe it is more than just instant feedback. Maybe it's feedback that's, qualified or quantified beforehand. Or set up from a decent point.
Yeah, because, Etienne's opening with kind of the pioneers, right? These guys went higher in the atmosphere than anybody had at the time, then deeper in the water than anybody had at the time, then around the world in a way that nobody ever had before. And what was that last quote? Ben was taking pictures of it. But it's basically, what are you going to be remembered for?
Yeah. What do you want to be remembered for?
Yeah, and...
Unicycle. Sorry, wait, were you asking?
Unicycle?
You got to at least juggle if you're going to be on the unicycle.
I can do both.
Really?
Wow. I've never been able to put two together, but I can do both.
That's going to make a good
Maybe
video.
we can edit.
Yeah, I'd like to see that. But they kind of made that point at the beginning, right? That it's not that you have to do some groundbreaking thing. And so SIG is making things simpler. which might have this huge effect, right, down the road.
Yeah.
And so now being able to, that direct line between consumer or installer and a manufacturer, we might actually be able to play a bigger role than we ever thought we could. Where what if it's one of our ideas or somebody else that's installing? I mean, that's how most of this stuff happens, right?
Yep.
And then it gets communicated back. The company looks into it. They try to, make it something that works. So if air sealing is simpler, won't more of us do it?
It's a great way.
But
to
if it's super complicated, then I know that's my personality. Is like, that's really complicated. Someone else will figure out how to do it, and I'll just wait for them to teach me. Right?
Yeah.
But now it's getting more simple with these systems. Like you guys talk about Schluter. I personally know people that couldn't frame a wall, but can go to Schluter training, and now they can install something that's
going to hold water.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk real quick about one of the things that we learned today, Siga's in-house policy for innovation. If you work here, you're required to give a suggestion a week or whatever, every 10 days or something, as to how the company might be better. When we were here last time, they actually had a wide open space downstairs that they've filled in with some equipment now for production reasons. They had a wide open space that just had a few rolls of their substrates in it sitting on pallets. And when we first walked up, it kind of looked like a wasted space. And they're like, oh, well, we had like 6 high storage here. And one of our forklift operators realized that he was spending like 30% of his day running the forklift up and down rather than just picking it up and carrying it over where it is. And it was like that came from their in-house idea that everybody can innovate sort of thing. And I it's genius. Like, who knows how the factory operates better than the people that work in the factory?
Yeah.
And clearly, what is it? Every 10 days, they stop, they sit down, and they actually read. And they really take this feedback. It's not just a box you put in an office and never look at for the next year. It's legitimately like conversation
It's scheduled.
starters.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that dedication and commitment to that idea of taking this feedback and really trying to make it better is, I think Toyota was the example that they had used. Toyota is the one doing that kind of thing when you go on a factory tour or something like that with them.
It's free.
Yeah. But all they're requiring or asking for is some honest feedback. That's gold.
Yeah. And that's what they did for us today. At the very end of the day, they passed out a piece of paper and a pencil and said, if you want to have food tonight, I need you to write something down.
And you were the first up there.
And I was. Do you want to know what mine was?
Yeah.
It was, you're going to have to make this flashing boot in a 8-inch because so many of the HVAC returns are 8-inch. And they hadn't promoted that they were going to make that 8-inch.
Want to know what mine was?
What?
Let us go home before 8.
Don't hold us hostage.
You want to know what my brother's was? More bathroom breaks.
Very innovative.
We drank
from
a lot of coffee
The Uhler
today.
family.
Yeah, we're kind of known for that.
Here's a really nice
I'm
coffee
ready for
machine.
bed and I need to pee. Can we go? This was really interesting, but I need to pee. On that note, I can tell that I do owe you guys a debt of gratitude for doing it a second time and apparently missing out on the ribs completely because Ben's plate is clean.
Wow, he's
like
going
trip
in
number
for
5.
another.
That is that 5?
I think
I counted 4.
it's got to take a lot of protein to build a beard like that.
Those two things correlate.
If it's real.
Well,
let's be honest.
if your beard was longer than that, you would know.
You should have seen it a week ago.
On that note, I don't know what the publication schedule is for this. Tim's going to join me every day this week. We're going to record a podcast, a daily wrap up.
Let me just pre-apologize to the audience.
Yeah. So you can skip the next 4 or 5 if you are tired of Tim already.
It's okay. I'll come join you.
Chris, thank you for sitting in.
Thanks for having me.
It's been a pleasure to get to know you and your wife. You as well, Tim. And thank you
Likewise,
guys.
now I definitely know that your better half is much smarter than you.
This is
I've seen it in
my
person.
better half.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah. She helped me work a doorknob earlier. So
Well, let's be honest. These European
they're
doors, I
Euro
go the
doorknobs.
wrong way
They
every
are.
time.
Yep.
I can't get. We can't. We just want to eat. We can't get out of the room.
Every door is different.
Okay. Thanks for listening.